I guess I hardly need to say it, but today is Christmas Eve, and our discipline of Advent waiting is nearly at an end. As familiar as we are with the Christmas story, the angels, the shepherds, Mary and Joseph, the Magi from the East, what happens at Christmas remains the central mystery of the Christian faith. There's even a theological word for it, incarnation. This word does not appear in the Bible itself, but is a word the church early on came to apply to the birth of Jesus Christ. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Saturday, December 24th, 2022. Nearly everyone I know who has ever visited the Church of the Incarnation in Bethlehem has come away with mixed emotions. On the one hand, the church is very, very old, parts of it dating back to the 4th century. Standing in a worship space that old is just awe-inspiring. On the other hand, climbing down the short flight of steps in the middle of the sanctuary and stepping into the grotto where tradition holds that Jesus was born is kind of strange. The place looks nothing like what we imagine. It's a cave. And in the place where tradition holds that Jesus was laid in the manger, there is a shrine covering the spot. In fact, the entire church was built right on top of the place so that there is absolutely no way to imagine it as it was 2,000 odd years ago. Now, if this offends our sensibility, it only offends the sensibilities of us modern Western Christians who want to see things as they actually were. We want a museum, not a shrine. But the fact that it was early on transformed into a shrine tells us something of its importance. It marks a place, a specific location in the world. Something happened there. Something happened there. God came into our world as a human being, and for the last 2,000 years we have struggled to put into human words what happened and how it came to be. To make sense of it, we tell stories. The stories surrounding the birth have become for us not so much historical accounts as dreamscapes that take our hearts and our minds to a different dimension, a dimension where human language alone simply cannot go. The stories take us into the realm of mystery. Now, beside the stories in Matthew and Luke, the two Gospels that tell us the Christmas stories, we also turn to the Gospel of John. Tonight at Love Feast, we will conclude the story of Christmas by the light of several hundred candles representing the light of God come into the world in Jesus Christ. And while that's going on, we'll hear the opening words of the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In one sentence, with 3 phrases, John lays before us the essential mystery of the Incarnation, of Almighty God taking on human flesh. But we won't read the entire passage. Traditionally, we stop at the 14th verse, but the next 3 verses also help us understand what is at stake in the Incarnation. John writes, "And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth." John testified to him and cried out, "This was he of whom I said, 'He who comes after me ranks ahead of me, because he was before me.'" From his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. The law indeed was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is God the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known. This helps me understand what the love of God that we celebrate is all about. 3 phrases tell us all we need to know. First, the Word became flesh and lived among us. We're used to hearing it translated, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us." But even this doesn't get to the heart of it. The Greek word comes from a term meaning a tent or a temporary dwelling. In other contexts, the word refers to a tabernacle, a temporary dwelling, as in the tabernacle of God with which the Israelites traveled in the wilderness for 40 years. In our present context, it means that in Jesus Christ, God has once again come to dwell with us for a time, to literally camp in our midst. The second phrase is, "From him we have all received grace upon grace." If grace is good, grace upon grace is even better, infinitely better. Grace on top of grace is John's way of saying that in Jesus Christ, God has piled grace upon us. It is God's apparent intention to shower us with grace, to surround us with grace. And if that's not a gift of love, I don't know what is. Finally, it is God the only Son who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known. If you want to know what God is like, all the fancy theological statements in the world will fall short. If you want to know what God is like, look at Jesus Christ, what he says, what he does, and perhaps most importantly, what he endures for our sake. He who came as an infant will come to suffer for our redemption. If you want to know the heart of God, look no farther than Jesus. He is love incarnate. With that, may you come to know the abundance of God's love for you and for all the world in this Christmas season. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.